Hi everyone, it's Sachin. Hope you are amazing. It is coming towards the end of the year, and all of us are probably reflecting on the things that we've accomplished over the last 11 and a half or so months. And now it's time to reflect on the year, but it's also time to start reflecting on what we're going to be trying to accomplish in the new year. So as you're tuning in, what I want you to do is I want you to share what some of your biggest goals are for the year to come. And I want to teach you the strategies on how you can actually accomplish these goals by using the way the brain works as a way to leverage your ability to accomplish these tasks. So there's several reasons why and how you accomplish a goal. And if that goal actually comes to fruition or not is very, very predictable. And I'm going to teach you some of the strategies that I use to increase my levels of productivity, to overcome procrastination, to help me get things done, and then move on to other things. So first and foremost, as you're tuning in, I would love to hear what some of your big goals are. One of the first things that I'll tell you about goal setting is to share your goal with as many people as possible. And I'm going to get into why we do that. We actually activate a part of our brain called the reticular activating system. And then when that happens, and when we share our goals, we actually activate other people's reticular activating systems. So I'm going to teach you a little bit more about what that is. Goal setting and goal accomplishment is actually very important, and it's part of the way we motivate ourselves, stay focused, and also feel rewarded for the task that we're accomplishing. When we feel rewarded for what we've actually done and accomplished, then there's a chemistry that takes place in our brain that allows us to feel rewarded and reinforce the healthy behavior that allowed us to accomplish the goal. Now, one of the things that's happened to us over the years as we've evolved as human beings and as society has evolved, people have, and powers that be, understand how the brain's reward system works, and they essentially manipulate it and hijack it. So the main way this reward takes place from a chemical standpoint is through a neurotransmitter in our brain called dopamine. So if you've ever felt inspired or motivated to do something, and you were able to stay focused on that task, and then you felt good about that task being completed, then that's usually a sign of a good motivation and reward system in the brain. Think of it this way. If you're somebody who has a lot of unfinished projects, if you're somebody who starts things and never quite gets them done, if you're somebody who has a hard time even getting started despite the fact that you know what it is that you need to do. So you might know full and well that you need to exercise or to eat healthy or to go for a walk or do that extra step that completes the project that you're working on. You might be fully aware of those things, but whether you actually accomplish that goal or not is going to be dependent on how this reward system works. Now, one of the things that's happened over the years in the way society functions is this reward system has essentially been broken. So if you were a hunter-gatherer, if you were living in a typical hunter-gatherer society, the harder you worked, the more you would get in return. So think of it this way. If you're working really hard, let's say your job is to chop wood, and the reward was having chopped wood so you could keep your family warm, or let's say the job was to go out and hunt an animal or prey, or to pick fruits or pick berries, then here's what would happen. You would feel inspired and motivated to actually go out and do it because of the reward system and the way dopamine works. But when you came home and when you were actually accomplishing that goal, the amount of accomplishment that you had would be proportional to the amount of work that you do. So think of it this way. If you're going to work every week, week in and week out, and you get paid the exact same amount, regardless of how hard you work, then there's really no reward on the back end. And in some cases, hard work is actually punished by not having a reward on the back end. So you could put in double the amount of work in 1 week, and you're still going to get paid the same amount on your check. So what do people do? Because they don't have a corresponding reward that corresponds to the amount of work that they put forth, the result is they've got to compensate and feel rewarded in other areas of their life. And they've got to raise this reward neurotransmitter in the brain called dopamine. So let's start thinking about what raises dopamine. What raises dopamine are usually quick fixes. So things like foods that are very sweet, right? How would we normally get sweet foods? We would have to go pick them from a tree, right? Another thing that raises dopamine are savory and fatty foods, okay? Because again, those things we would have to actually go out and hunt and get those things. Another thing that increases dopamine is alcohol, cigarettes, certain drugs like marijuana also raises dopamine. Another thing that raises dopamine is sex. This is why people might become addicted to pornography. So all of our addictive behaviors are usually because we're compensating for a broken reward system, and we have to somehow fill that gap. If you didn't do that, if you didn't, work hard, work your butt off, get a paycheck that's not proportional to the amount of work that you do, then essentially you would have no reason to get yourself involved in these dopamine increasing behaviors, because you would have a corresponding level of reward for the amount of effort that you put forth. So this is just kind of a preface. If this makes sense, just give me a little thumbs up. I don't want to lose anyone. But it's very important to understand how the brain's rewards mechanism works, because then you can understand how it's being manipulated and why certain people have certain behavioral tendencies. It's because of this reward system being broken. So that's very important to understand. This is where goal setting and all those things kind of fall apart because of this broken system that's in place. And we see this all around us. And this is why, when people are excited, when they're celebrating, they consume dopamine-raising foods or, beverages like alcohol or chocolate, things like that. And this is also why when they're depressed, they consume the same foods, because it's all about dopamine. It's all about that reward neurotransmitter. People want to feel good, and dopamine makes us feel good. This is why some people are addicted to social media. So anyone who's an aholic, so whether you're a workaholic, a sexaholic, a alcoholic, a cigarette aholic, pot-aholic, or whatever you are, if the word aholic is attached to the back of it, it has to do with dopamine. So that being said, there's certain people that will be genetically susceptible to high levels of dopamine conversion. And what that means is these people burn through dopamine very, very quickly. So these are people like myself, so I'm genetically guilty of this. I don't know if that's the right word, but genetically, when I do testing on myself and I genetically test my executive function, I have a very high dopamine conversion. And what that means is that it means that I'm always looking for the next thing to do. I'm always looking to start projects, to finish projects, because I need that quick fix. And it's not always a quick fix, but I need a fix. And so a lot of times what I'm discovering now is a lot of entrepreneurs are actually addicts that have now found a passion for their addiction, if you will. So sometimes understanding ourselves a little bit better through genetic testing can be of great importance. So that's another thing to keep in mind as well, is goal accomplishment is proportional and related to how we're hardwired. So keep that in mind. Not everyone is built the same. So some people are hardwired to be entrepreneurs, and this is something that I prove in a book that I'm writing called The Motivation Molecule. And some people are hardwired not to be entrepreneurs. Everyone can't be the hunter and gatherer. You can't have the entire tribe go out and hunt for the game, right? You send a few people out, and these are usually a small percentage of the tribe. They go out and hunt the game because that's what gets them up and gets them going. Now, one thing that we have to keep in mind with this reward system is how we reward ourselves. So when we're trying to accomplish a goal or when we're trying to accomplish a task, there has to be a reward when that task is actually completed. So many of us forget to reward ourselves, and sometimes we'll actually reward ourselves with something that actually sabotages what we're rewarding ourselves for. And an example of this would be if somebody maintains a healthy diet for 2 weeks and now they want to go and celebrate by eating the very foods that they were avoiding for 2 weeks. So this is where people start sabotaging themselves, and the reason they do that is because they're not getting intrinsic motivation. They're not being inspired internally to actually feel good about the task that they accomplished. So somebody will eat healthy for 2 weeks, lose 10 pounds, and then go have a meal that completely sabotages them and kind of breaks their reward system. So momentarily they feel good because they got a spike in dopamine because of the rich foods that they were eating, but where they should have gotten that reward from is actually from accomplishing the task. Okay, so they're using external things like food or cigarettes or alcohol to raise dopamine to compensate for them not being able to make dopamine internally. So that's another thing for us to keep in mind, is there has to be an appropriate reward versus a sabotaging reward in order for us to accomplish anything. So ways that you want to accomplish goals is very important. And some of this stuff is talked about from various books. I've read hundreds of books over the years and listened to hundreds of podcasts over the years. Some of this stuff is going to come from biology, so it's going to be stuff that might be unfamiliar to you. But anytime I want to accomplish a goal, I first think about it. Okay, I first write it, think about it, massage the idea in my head. I think about my life and having accomplished that goal. Does my quality of life improve? Do my values stay intact if I accomplish this goal? So my core values are, for me, is having freedom, is having time with my family, is being able to be at home with my family. So I'm actually doing this Facebook Live from my son's room, and as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to go hang out with him. We're going to go watch a movie. So my core values have to remain intact in order for me to then pursue that goal. If a goal is accomplished and in my mind it actually doesn't align with my core values, then it's not going to be a goal that I want to pursue, because where I end up as a result of that is not going to be where I want to be in the long run. So first and foremost, when we think about our goals, we have to think about how does our life change and do our core values remain intact if this goal is accomplished. And this could be big goals. Obviously, I'm not talking about vacuuming your floor. I mean, your life is not going to change very much if you get that done or not. So I'm talking about big goals. The other thing that I think about when I'm thinking about a goal is I want to write it down. So I have a journal that I carry with me, and you can see I just got this journal a month ago, and I write in it pretty much every day. Okay, I doodle, I write, I scratch, I have ideas, I highlight. So I have a journal with me pretty much everywhere I go. Anywhere my computer is, even if I'm not taking my computer, my journal comes with me because I'm always writing down ideas as they pop into my head. And so writing down your goals, writing down anything is very important for the brain. So when we write something down, there's something special, something magical that happens. There's a special connection that our brain has with our writing hand. So I'm left-handed. Some of you might be right. Most of you are right-handed watching this. But as a lefty, we say we're the only ones in our right mind. That's kind of the lefty joke, if you will. But that being said, it's more important for you to write something down than it is for you to put it into your computer or to type it into your phone. Because again, there's something magical between our writing hand and the brain that helps us accomplish things better. The other thing that is super important when we're trying to accomplish a goal is actually saying that goal out loud. Okay, now there's a part of our brain, part of our reptilian brain, called the reticular activating system. And I appreciate all the loves and likes, guys. Thank you. I love seeing those come in. So the reticular activating system is what we call a servo mechanism. It's constantly scanning our environment. And what I mean by that is our environment is constantly inputting information. There's sounds that are constantly coming in, light information that's coming in. There's auditory information. There's gustatory information like taste and olfactory information like smell, our senses. There's information that's constantly coming into our bodies. And what's benefit about this is, what's super important about this is all this information is being processed. So our brain can really only focus on a few things consciously at a time. Like me doing this right now, there's all this information that's coming in to my brain, but I'm focused on doing this talk right now. So everything around me, I can see it, but I can't pay attention to it. We can only really pay attention to one thing at a time consciously. Our unconscious mind is 1,000,000 times more powerful. So if you haven't read the book, read the book, The Biology of Belief. Because our unconscious brain is 1,000,000 times more powerful, it's important to understand what information we program into it, because now we can increase our ability to recognize things in our environment 1,000,000-fold once we actually acknowledge what it is that we're looking for. So a simple example that I can give you is if you're ever shopping for a car or a purse or a jacket, or whatever it might be, whatever you're shopping for, once you put into your mind that that's something you want, you're going to start noticing this item popping up everywhere you go. So if it's a red Tesla that you want to buy, guess what car you're going to see everywhere you go? You're going to see red Teslas popping up. Now, people didn't go out and buy a red Tesla because you wanted it, and it might feel that way to the unaware brain, to the unconscious brain. You'd be like, wow, everyone already has this car. Why am I going to go buy it? And then you sabotage your goal. Those Teslas were already there. People had already bought those red Teslas long before you wanted them. But what happened is you put into your subconsciousness what it is you want through your conscious awareness, and you program this into your mind, and now your mind is going to start recognizing the things that you want, and it's going to start presenting them in your things that are happening in your periphery. They're going to start becoming part of your conscious awareness. Now, here's a magical part. Here's what happens when you start telling other people what your goals are. Their unconscious mind starts becoming aware of what your goals are. So this is the magical part. If my goal is to do something specific, and I tell each and every one of you that are watching this right now, guess what? It doesn't take any bandwidth in your life because this is happening unconsciously. So it's not going to take you off your focus. Anything that you're going to be doing, it's like taking a drop of water out of the ocean. It has no impact on your life whatsoever. But what's going to happen when you know that I'm looking for something specific, it's going to start popping up in your unconscious mind, and it's going to raise to the level of your consciousness. So now if I say that I'm looking for a red Tesla, you're going to start seeing red Teslas everywhere you go. But if I tell you I've got a problem that I'm trying to solve and I need a specific solution, then guess what? If that solution presents itself in your periphery, it's going to start coming to your consciousness. And now I've increased the likelihood of actually solving that problem, because now I've increased the consciousness of this problem by 1,000,000-fold, because remember, your unconscious mind is 1,000,000 times more powerful. So the more people you tell what problem you're trying to solve, the more consciousness you're raising about the problem as it presents itself, as a solution presents itself to the people that you've made aware of this. So I always tell people things that I'm going to do in advance, because it does a couple of things. It raises their consciousness of the solution or the problem, and it also holds me accountable to actually solving that problem or accomplishing the task. And we tend to be more committed to other people than we are committed to ourselves. Another example would be, in order to help you accomplish things, would be having accountability partners. So having somebody who is accountable to you and you're accountable to them is also another very important way to help solve your goals. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't know anyone who has the same goals as me, then you need to find a different set of friends. That's the other thing with motivation, is who you hang out with matters. So if your friends all have radically different goals than you, and the only thing you have in common is you like eating crappy food and getting drunk, then you need to find a new set of friends. And I know you guys watching this aren't those people, but just think about that. If all of your friends have goals that are completely unaligned with yours, then how are these people ever going to help elevate you to that person that all of you deserve to be, which is the best version of yourself? So I like hanging out with people that think the same way, that eat the same way, or similar way rather, not the same, right? But similar or complementary, we can put it that way, whose core values are aligned with mine, and therefore, guess what? Their goals are going to be relatively aligned with mine, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind, is who you keep company with, and who you hold accountable and who holds you accountable is extremely, extremely important. So what we've covered so far is we've covered that you should have understand how the reward system works. So if you're just tuning in, go back to the beginning of this video, understand how the brain's reward system works chemically and biologically. We talked about writing, like understanding what your goals are, and then visualizing your life having accomplished those goals, and making sure that when you accomplish those goals, your core values stay intact. The third thing we talked about was writing down your goals, because when you write things down, especially like in a journal, there's a special connection between your brain and your writing hand. The fourth thing we talked about was having accountability, so holding other people accountable and them holding you accountable. And then the company that, the number five thing we talked about was the company that you keep. So who do you hang out with? Do your friends have similar goals as you, or do they have completely opposite goals as you, and they're not able to hold you accountable to what you're trying to accomplish? You want to hang around with people who are winners, who are, who are trying to get things done in their life, if that's what your goal is as well. And you're probably watching this because that is your goal. I also mentioned earlier about genetic testing. So there is executive function testing that can be done that can actually help you identify if you have a rapid metabolism of dopamine or a slow metabolism of dopamine. I have a very rapid metabolism of dopamine, and we found this trait to be very existent in very specific types of people. So entrepreneurs generally tend to have this trait, genetically speaking, and people with ADD and ADHD generally have this trait as well. So we kind of label people with ADD and ADHD as a problem, but it's the system that's the problem because it doesn't recognize this trait, and then it doesn't support these people. A hunter-gatherer, the person that's going to go out there and hunt, that person shouldn't be sitting inside of a hut listening to stories. That person needs to be out there hunting and bringing animals or prey or food or whatever back, because that person's brain works differently. And that person is going to be a rare person in a tribe. So entrepreneurs generally tend to be a smaller percentage of society, where they're just wired a little bit differently. And we can recognize, because these traits are genetic, we can recognize them at a very young age. So we can actually groom these traits in individuals at a very young age. So if somebody has ADD, ADHD type tendencies, well, looking at their genetics and their dopamine metabolism might help explain why, and maybe those people don't belong in the same schooling system or the same architecture of schooling as the rest of the students do, because their brains work and think and are rewarded completely differently. These people generally tend to be more prone to risk. They generally tend to be thrill seekers and risk seekers, and we see that in these individuals, and has nothing to do with intelligence. People with ADD and ADHD generally, and entrepreneurs generally, are not any more intelligent than the average person. They're just willing to make more mistakes because they're looking for their next fix. They're looking for that next challenge. They're looking for that next thing that they want to accomplish. So because they're so willing to make mistakes, they generally eventually get it right and become successful. We've seen this over and over again in entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs, if you ask them honestly and discreetly, even publicly now, it's very well known that entrepreneurs are usually addicts, and then a lot of it has to do with the way their dopamine metabolism works. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm working on this in my upcoming book, and I'm going to prove that entrepreneurs are genetically wired differently. So these are some important things to take into consideration when accomplishing your goals and getting things done. Now, a couple other things I want to mention to you that I think are very relevant is procrastination. So how do we overcome procrastination? A lot of times we'll procrastinate on things that we actually don't want to do. And sometimes things that we don't want to do can stem from our upbringing. They can stem from trauma. They can stem from childhood issues that have come up. So it's not that we're too lazy to do them. We might just have a stigma attached to them. So one of the things that I'll tell you is I hate doing the dishes. I despise doing the dishes. You tell me to paint a room and I'll go and get everything I need to go paint it. I'll go to Home Depot, buy everything. But you tell me to do the dishes and I'll drag my feet. So is it because I'm lazy? Well, no, because I would rather do something way harder and something way different than do the dishes. So if you start deconstructing where some of this comes from, for me, it comes from my parents really being super nitpicky about me doing the dishes when I was young, to the point where I hate doing the dishes now. Not their fault, I'm not blaming them, but when you deconstruct, sometimes the things that we're quote unquote lazy about have emotional attachments to them. So ask yourself that. If there's something that you just can't wrap your head around or you're not doing, then deconstruct where it's coming from and then use your adult brain to work around it and just do it. So lately I've been doing the dishes because it's the right thing to do and it helps my wife out, and of course I want to be a good husband. So I just have to work around that. But when we understand where some of these emotional blocks are coming from, then we can work around them and work through them. So if there's something that you're putting off, something that you just can't get your head around, something that you just hate doing, deconstruct it and see where it's coming from. A lot of times we won't feel inspired or motivated to do things that hurt because the brain avoids pain. Okay, that's one of the things our brain does. The brain's job isn't to keep us happy. The brain's job is to keep us alive. So a lot of people will have goals about exercising in the new year. They might have weight loss goals, dietary, nutritional goals. But really what you have to ask yourself is not what am I doing to avoid pain, but what am I doing to keep myself happy? And you'll be the healthiest you've ever been when you're the happiest you've ever been. That's why as children are so healthy. It's not because, yes, maybe because they're young, but they're so healthy because they're so happy, right? And as adults, we tend to lose some of our happiness. And you can see this all over the place. You see some people that are very unconscious about nutrition, but they're super happy and they're in relatively decent shape and their blood work comes back perfectly normal. And then you have some people that are super conscious about what they eat, but they're not happy. They're not happy in their relationships. They're not happy in their job. They're not happy in their vocation. They're not happy in other elements of their life that they may not have dealt with. And where they're trying to compensate is by eating healthy. But happiness is the new form of healthiness. And I said this a little while ago that the intake form of the future will be one question, and that'll be, are you happy? And if you're happy, then let's ask more questions. But if you're not happy, then every other question I ask you after this is not going to matter, because if I take out the heavy metals, I take out the toxins, I take out the inflammatory foods, but you're still not happy because of something else, then you're never going to be healthy. You'll never experience true bliss and health the way God intended you to. So that's another thing is that's very important when we talk about motivation and inspiration, is doing things that we love doing. So if you hate exercising, why would you commit to exercising 3 days a week? How long do you think that's going to last? You don't even enjoy doing it. It doesn't make you happy. Maybe walking your dog makes you happier. Maybe volunteering somewhere makes you happier. Maybe doing things around the home makes you happier. You can get physical activity doing other things. One of the things that I want to do in the future, this would be a really radical idea, but when you think about people who work out, here's the thing. People who exercise might not always tell you this, but they are addicts as well. So they're addicted to exercise, but they don't get a ton of reward from exercise. You feel good, you get the endorphins rushing, but you don't have radical, dramatic changes in your body composition in a short period of time. So you put in high amounts of effort and you don't really get an immediate reward. You might get a little swollen, you might get a good pump going if you're thin enough that matters, but the rest of us don't see dramatic changes when we exercise. So we end up not getting a ton of reward from something like that. So one of the things that I was gonna say is, imagine you had people where instead of exercising and just moving weights, which doesn't really change anything around you, because those weights just go back where you got them from. Imagine your exercise was building a house. So every day, instead of working out, you would go in and put an hour of physical labor building a house for homeless people or for people who are less privileged. And at the end of like a month, all these people that were putting all this energy into weights and jumping around like idiots and doing all kinds of stupid things in the gym, you would actually have a house done with the same amount of actual, kilojoule effort that was applied. And then imagine how much higher your dopamine levels would go seeing that you built this house at the end of the month instead of lost a couple of pounds. So that's a new idea for a gym that, who knows, maybe I'll open up one day where we build houses for people as they work out. That's their exercise. And one of my toughest jobs I ever had was doing kitchen and bathroom renovations. That was my first real job in between in my summer years in college. So grew up really fast doing that. It was a lot of labor involved in that. Good exercise, put on a lot of muscle too. All right. All right. Any other questions that you guys have? I'd love to hear some of your goals. I mean, one of the things we talked about was sharing your goals. So share some of your goals, and if there's anything I can do to help you, I mean, just by sharing it, it's automatically, whether you know it or not, my unconscious brain is going to start paying attention to what you've raised to my consciousness. And if the solution pops up in my environment, then my brain will point directly to it. This is how networking works. This is how referrals work. This is how a lot of business works, is just by raising problems to other people's consciousness so they can help you solve their problems. So just in closing, okay, so Tom says he wants to build or buy his dream house this year. Tom, that's my goal as well. So we can hold each other accountable. Maybe we can share what that means in a little bit more detail. So this year, my wife and I are going to move. We're going to move from our condo and we're going to move into a home for a few reasons. One, I want a yard, and it's something I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for the perfect timing, and the timing is now. So we're going to be making that dive. So yeah, I'll be excited to see what your dream house looks like, and certainly I'll share what I find with you as well. That's awesome. Anyone else want to share their goal? Okay, Ala says she's developing a better self-leadership, and she's always amazed at our wisdoms, and she loves listening. Thank you, Ala. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate that. Dorothy says build lots of community partners to help each other cross-promote and spread the message of health. Awesome. That's a great idea. Yesterday I was talking to a practitioner that I coach, and he was asking me what's the fastest way to build a business. And the fastest way to build a business is through relationships. So relationships, I actually thought about a book I wanted to write called Relationships to Riches instead of Rags to Riches, because your relationships that you have with yourself first, but then with your immediate network of people, and then your community is extremely important in raising awareness of a problem that you solve if you're a business owner. So I would love to see how that plays out for you guys, and I'll hold you and Justin accountable to that. Okay, Karen wants to start to garden. She wants to learn about herbs, and she wants to do 365 days of yoga and complete 365 days of her gratitude journal. That's awesome. Awesome. So I'll hold you accountable to that. Certainly will, and that's fantastic. 355. See, you can't miss a single day. Okay, a lot of pressure, but I think you can do it. I know you're capable of it. All right, guys. Well, this has been a great session. I hope you found it helpful. I hope this inspires you to take action. We covered a lot of different concepts. I'm going to be diving deeper into some of these concepts in the new year because I think goal setting is the easy part, but it's accomplishing the goal that's the challenge. And a lot of it has to do with a broken reward system that unfortunately has intentionally been broken, right? So everything the system is set up to work exactly the way it's working right now. So every system is set up to work the way it's working right now. And our system is set up. That's why we have more alcoholics than ever. We have more aholics than ever before, because people are not properly understanding how their reward system works, how their motivation system works, and their brains are getting zapped, and we're turning to addictive behaviors to compensate for that. So again, I hope this helps. I wish all of you an amazing year ahead, and let's make 2018 the best one ever. Thank you. I love you guys. Merry Christmas if you celebrate it, and Happy New Year. I'll see you back in the new year when we do our first Facebook Live of the new year. Thanks. Talk to you soon.